In a change of guard in Sri Lanka, President Maithripala Sirisena has named his predecessor Mahinda Rajapaksa as the country's new Prime Minister. After the collapse of the governing coalition, Sirisena sacked Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe after the president's party left the ruling coalition. But questions remain over the legality of the move, as a constitutional amendment passed in 2015 had taken away the president's power to sack the Prime Minister. However, Sirisena said that his decision was legal. U.S. Defense Secretary Jim Mattis meets with the King of Bahrain, Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa, in Manama ahead of a policy speech before Arab leaders. Mattis arrived in Bahrain on Friday and will address the Manama dialogue at a time of strained U.S. ties with key ally Saudi Arabia over the murder earlier this month of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. French President Emmanuel Macron meets with Slovakian Prime Minister Peter Pellegrini during his official trip to Slovakia. Now, Macron's visit to Slovakia comes ahead of the celebrations of the centenary of the formation of Czechoslovakia. France was the first country in the world to recognize a newly emerged European state on October 28, 1918. Macron's trip is the first visit of the French premier to Slovakia since François Hollande's visit in the year 2013. Thousands of migrants trekking across Mexico towards the United States border seem undeterred by threats that the Trump administration would send troops to the frontier in a bid to stop any illegal passage. Groups of the migrants hitched a ride on the back of an open-air truck as they headed towards their destination. The migrants are mainly from Central American countries of Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador. Earlier, U.S. Defense Secretary Jim Mattis authorized the use of troops and other military resources at the U.S.-Mexico border to stop the caravan. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited the Gulf state of Oman and discussed peace initiatives in the Middle East with Omani leader Sultan Qaboos. Netanyahu's office shared the news of the visit only after he returned home. The rare visit was not publicized beforehand and comes days after Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas met Qaboos on a 3-day visit to the country. Interestingly, Netanyahu was accompanied by senior Israeli officials, including the head of the Mossad intelligence agency and his national security advisor. Four Palestinians were shot dead and at least 50 others were left injured as Israeli forces responded to another round of protests at the Gaza border. At least 16,000 Palestinians had gathered at the Gaza border and hurled grenades, firebombs and rocks at the Israeli troops. Near daily protest along the Gaza border since March 30th against Israel's crippling 11-year blockade of the impoverished enclave have sparked repeated clashes with the army. More than 200 Palestinians and one Israeli have been killed in the violence so far. Italian Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte received President of the Libyan Presidential Council Fayez al-Sarraj less than 3 weeks before the Palermo summit on the pacification of Libya. Relations between Tripoli and Rome have been improving owing to the re-establishment of friendly ties some month back. Italy also wants Libya to curb to find a solution for its migration crisis. Thousands of opposition supporters held a rally in the Congolese capital of Kinshasa, seeking the withdrawal of electronic voting machines in a long-delayed election due to at the end of December, saying that they would be misused to rig the results. Two days before Brazil picks its next president, thousands gathered in front of Rio de Janeiro's electoral court on Friday to protest its ruling, forcing universities to remove banners containing allegedly illegal electoral propaganda. Now, electoral courts in 6 other states have made similar moves, which led several top Brazilian judges to criticize the decisions as a blow to freedom of speech. Students and professors accused the Rio court of exercising censorship and working in favor of Bolsonaro, who leads all polls before Sunday's runoff. Two decades after Matthew Shepard was kidnapped and killed, his remains were interred at the Washington National Cathedral. Shepard, a 21-year-old gay student at the University of Wyoming, was tied to a fence, pistol whipped and left unconscious in the cold for 18 hours. Days later, he died at a Colorado hospital. The violence was said to be driven by his two attackers' anti-gay anger. The Episcopal Cathedral hosted a service for the public that saw over 2,500 people in attendance. A wreath-laying ceremony to honor the Chinese soldiers who fought alongside the North Korea in the Korean War was held at Pyongyang Sino-Korean Friendship Tower. The event was attended by Chinese ambassador to North Korea. The ceremony ended with a moment of silence for the Chinese martyrs. Pyongyang has also decided to renovate the memorial. French Prime Minister Edouard Philippe paid tribute to the last French soldier killed on home soil during World War I. At a special ceremony in the martyr's hometown, the soldier died minutes before the war got over on November 11th, 1918. He was fighting against the German army. A 45-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of trying to steal an original copy of the 700-year-old Magna Carta from a Salisbury cathedral in southern England. Now, alarms were activated when an attempt was made to smash the glass box containing the priceless medieval charter. One of the most important manuscripts in English history, the Magna Carta, is a charter of a citizen's rights curbing the arbitrary power of medieval kings, which, among other things, guaranteed the right to a fair trial. Six people, including an elderly man and woman, died in floods in southern Russia as emergency workers struggled to get food and water to the victims. Flash floods affected parts of the Krasnodar region, including the area around the Black Sea resort city of Sochi, where Moscow hosted the Winter Olympics in the year 2014. Hundreds of displaced Syrians living in temporary relief camps were affected by the country's first winter storm. The storm has belted down on thousands of displaced Syrians huddled in flimsy tents in a muddy field in the country's last major rebel stronghold of Idlib. In northwestern Idlib, at least 300 people currently live in makeshift tents as the 7-year-long war has destroyed their homes and stolen their livelihoods. A powerful 6.4 magnitude earthquake shook western Greece, leaving large cracks in the port city of Zakynthos Island. The quake sent out tremors felt as far as Libya, Italy, Malta and Albania, and Greek authorities have initially issued a tsunami warning, then withdrew the alert. 3 people were taken to the hospital on the island, 2 of them slightly injured. A series of aftershocks, the highest at 5.6, rattled the island and power was briefly disrupted. A private French museum showcasing personal histories from World War I has been attracting visitors in the Balma region. The museum is a treasure trove of objects which have been carefully collected and curated to offer an insight into the human stories behind the Great War. Britain's Prince Harry and his wife Meghan Markle presented the awards for Young Adventurer of the Year and Young Conservationist of the Year at the Australian Geographic Society Award ceremony in Sydney. Prince Harry received an award on behalf of his grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II, for her outstanding contribution to global conservation through the Queen's Commonwealth Canopy project. The annual event celebrates outstanding adventure and conservation across Australia. In the Ivory Coast, students from economically disadvantaged backgrounds are using solar backpacks to study. An Ivorian charity that promotes education for rural girls has raised funds to provide the backpacks, which cost €20 apiece to school children across Africa. President Trump, unicorns and superheroes from the film Black Panther will find common ground for the Halloween 2018. The shopkeepers across the U.S. are witnessing a surge in the sale of costumes from the hit Marvel film, along with traditional costumes like witches and classic superheroes. Halloween will be observed on November 1st in the U.S.